start. Sorry, I'm speaking English because I'm learning Polish for half a year. Bardzo rozumiem, a nie dużo mogę rozmawiać. Przepraszam. So, I will speak in English, and I am from Kontakt. My name is Alex. I work in Wrocław, and today I'm going to talk about development of mobile apps with Angular 4, IONIC, and TypeScript. So I'm happy that the previous speaker presented it to you. First of all, I'd like to meet you closer, and please raise your hands up who is a front-end developer here. Okay, I was ready for it because it's GTGDO. So please raise your hands who is a mobile developer here. Okay, it's alright. I won't show too much code. I will explain, like in global way, how does it work and how I done a mobile application using IONIC. And for front-end developers, I will explain how to do it. And for mobile developers, I will explain why we will not take your job away. So, and by the way, sorry for scaling problems, we can't change it now. First of all, I'd like to present my agenda. It's pretty simple. First of all, I'd like to talk about conception. First, afterwards, I'll talk about design and implementation. Many years ago, Sun Microsystems told a phrase. It's their quote that write once, run anywhere. Unfortunately, it's why. I don't believe in that actually, and in real life it looks like this. And that's exactly a phrase which explains my topic for today. So, there are many ways to create a hybrid mobile application. There are many languages you can use. And because I'm a front-end developer, I will talk about JavaScript. In JavaScript, there are also several ways and options you can use. Simplest one is to use WebView with Apache Cordova, and second way is creating native hybrid applications with React Native, which is popular, and NativeScript, which isn't. So, let's talk about conception of Cordova. Yes. Again, why it makes sense to use JavaScript. So, you can write it once. For example, you have existing application, as I had, and you want to create a mobile app out of that. Also, you can build your web application and already built mobile application with a desktop application, which is also cool. Also, you can easily adapt your web app to mobile, so you can make web version for mobiles, you can create mobile applications. So it looks like pretty adaptive to use it. And yes, it's a really fast way of prototyping. It's a good option to present your product before selling exact mobile application written in more suitable technologies. So, are hybrid mobile applications silver bullet? First of all, I'd like to mention that they are gonna be always slower than native application because they are transpiled into them, because they are run inside the real mobile application. So it's higher level of abstractions, and we can't avoid it. So our app is going to be slower. And it's not so flexible. I'll explain why. So, in general, idea is that we have operation system and down, and we add some proxy layer to interact with native APIs, for example, camera, for example, input outputs, accelerometer, file system, whatever. On top of it, we run WebView, which is actually browser without controls. and we run our web application in this browser. And our idea is to make this web application look and feel exactly like a real mobile app. And for these reasons exists IONIC, which I'm gonna present you today. So, what is mobile and web application? I made a comparison here. You can see browser and you can see mobile. And in general, most of the application really, they just make some calls to the server to retrieve some data, to interact with API. They have some storage to save data in mobile phones and in browser either. We have some input-output. Contemporary browsers allow you to use camera, allow you to use microphone, even MIDI devices. So it's pretty flexible, and mobiles of course, and also interaction with hardware, with some connected devices. So in the first instance, it looks like a good idea. Yes? But we have differences. First, I will start from that point which I mentioned before this slide. So exactly the same points. So first one is asynchronous calls to the server, because mobile phone and browser have different access policies. Browsers should care about cross-domain requests. I also did it. Achievement unlocked. So, there are different policies. One uses cross-domain policies. Mobile devices have problems connecting to non-protected HTTP endpoints. So, a little bit different way of making requests. Also, browsers support only several protocols. On mobile device, you can do more. Persistent storage is also different, because in browser we have variety of old, new APIs for these reasons. In mobile we have databases, local databases. So it's also more flexible. You can write to file system on the device. You can have access to its authorization easily. So a little bit different way of implementation. Also, input-output organized in the different ways, because from browser you can have access to camera, you can have access to microphone, to the screen, but APIs are different and implementation is totally different. And unfortunately, when we are porting our web application to mobile devices, we can't use our web APIs there efficiently. So, and it also covers point with hardware interaction. So, similar features, but different implementations. So, first of all, why I've chosen this technology that you can start it easily. Why I like Angular, that's now it's very popular to build Angular applications with Angular CLI, which gives you lots of flexibility on the one hand. You shouldn't spend nights with Webpack, and really happy about it. On the other hand, it gives kind of totalitarianism in your code, because it makes applications the same, what I personally like. So, IONIC is built on top of Angular, and they have their own CLI, which also provides this kind of totalitarianism we can use. So, design. Of course, I'm not going to talk about wireframes, I will talk about software design. So, there are the same layers I mentioned before. So, what's gray, it doesn't change. And also, we have the same web application, but I added one additional layer. It's called Mobile UI Kit. And why do we need it? We have different platforms. We have Android, we have iOS, we had Windows Phone. We can be happy it died. but it also supported. And many different platforms, at least 10 for now. So it's pretty flexible, and idea that we can implement web application and we can implement some UI level which will differ on build moment. So we can write it once, our web application, and we can use just UI kit to make interface kinda native-like for different platforms. So when we'll build project for Android, it will use Android controls. It will place controls in places where they usually are in Android application. And oppositely, if it will be for iOS, it will place those controls in correct places. And it will use correct styles. So it will look like iOS application. And in our scenario, our web application is Angular and our mobile UI kit is IONIC. So, as you can guess, IONIC is some application written in Angular, on top of Angular. And unfortunately, it isn't the best build of Angular I've seen, but... so, what is Cordova? I mentioned it several times, but I haven't shown it. So Cordova is aware, developed pretty much time ago, and there was another popular technology based on top of it. It's called PhoneGap. I believe someone heard of it, and it's still live. It's still in development, and they provide updates, which is important, and IONIC, and all this chain I mentioned. It's built on top of Cordova. So, what Cordova gives us? It gives us web view, and it allows us to proxy native APIs to the application. We can access native camera, we can access file system, we can access accelerometer, we can access file storage, and file storage access is terrible in this case because there are 10 different APIs, and you need to use all of them to read and write a file. It's really terrible. Also, we'll use Angular 4, just to mention for them who is not familiar with it. It's one of the most popular frameworks on frontend now. It is written in TypeScript, which is actually a superset of JavaScript, and it's just regular MVVM framework. It's modular framework, so you can just, if your application written correctly, you can just take one component and reuse it in another component. For example, you have written a login form, you can easily reuse it in other applications. And it has very powerful tooling. It has lots of cool features for linting your code, for writing unit tests, for code generation, CLI, for many different things. So it's pretty developed. It has a big community around it. It's developed by Google, and TypeScript is developed by Microsoft. So pretty big community and pretty big amount of money for marketing, and of course developers come here. And so about several more words about modularity. We have like simplified structure of any project. There is an application, some new widget, content form, and just imagine we have one component which is similar to applications. We have two apps and we have the same form. For example, login form. We can write it once and reuse it. We can export it to NPM model, for example, and use it as NPM model. So pretty easy, and it's based on the rule that our components should be architecture agnostic. Our components should have some inputs, outputs, some dependencies, but shouldn't know about other parts of the application. So, let's talk about IONIC itself. IONIC itself is not a library for Angular. it's configuration of firmware, and it literally built on top of it. So it's UI framework to imitate UI of mobile frameworks. I will just remind you that we have a browser, just a white screen, and we just draw elements which are similar to mobile controls. We have some components, some default components which are really useful, some buttons, bars, tabs, lists, tables, many different things which are available for mobile developers as native ones, and we have imitations of them with easy and flexible APIs. And of course it's ecosystem, and it isn't free, unfortunately. There are some plugins, some themes, and some prepared application. For example, you're gonna build a catalog of dishes, and you can just use some template for $9. Just add your endpoints, style it a little bit, and you have application which is suitable for biggest part of restaurants. Ideal scenario that we'll have some okay, I should say several more words before it. Okay, but we have question that we use our applications not only to interact with network and not only to display some data to our user. For example, let's take in mind the same application I mentioned where we created app for restaurants with menu. And for example, we want to add some QR codes in the menu and scan them. So we need to access camera. And our adventure starts at this point. So ideal scenario looks like this. So we just import some native components from IONIC and use them, include to the page and use them. We'll come back to that, but first of all I'd like to ask you who believes it will work. Yeah. So about components, you can notice how does it look on different platforms. For example, how does the same components look on iPhone, some buttons, default buttons, cards, lists, and you can see the same on Android, the same elements. And you shouldn't care about it when you develop your application. You just use some component like a button, and when you build the app for a specific platform, it will adopt special styles for it. Also, it supports Windows Phone. I added it as a joke, but respect and peace. Also, it allows us to use native elements such as prompts, alerts, and just regular browser ones, menus. Okay, it's time to talk about plugins, how we can access our file system, how we can access camera, how we can access sensors, and I'll extend that example I shown you. So we have camera object, which I imported on previous slide with code, and you can see some options. It's just default one, just don't care about names. And by idea, here, where is base 64, I should obtain a blob file with my photo I've taken from my device. So it looks like this one. It's the best illustration of it work. And the problem is that I wanted to create a demo for this event, and I have two mobile devices based on Android, one with 6th version and one with 7th. And I just taken this example. It's example from the website. I just removed their handling of photo. I built plain application from scratch step by step how they suggested to do. I edited, I imported camera plugin, and it crashed on both devices. So, it's the main bottleneck and the main problem. Sometimes people tell that Cordova allows you to avoid participation of real mobile developers in your application, but it doesn't work. For those plugins, you need mobile developers because they are written in native languages for those platforms. So that's the biggest problem. And summarizing Cordova plugins abridges. Quality of these plugins, to say softly, is controversial. For example, I also tried file system and it crashed on one of my devices. So, yes. Also, they are wrapper IONIC plugins. Some of them are really paid, but usually they are just wrappers of Cordova plugins, and you can easily use Cordova plugins in your code without any obsessions. And Cordova plugins are native. You can fix them with JavaScript, and if you're going to write some full-scale mobile applications with Cordova, probably you need a mobile developer anyway. For some smaller scale of work, probably, but... So, implementation. It will be the shortest part of the presentation. So, we have CLI, which allows us to create a project, to scaffold the basic structure with one command, and to download all required configuration for Cordova. So you shouldn't scare how to configure it, so we can just initiate any project, install environments for mobile devices, Xcode and Android Studio, and you can build a whole world like in 5 minutes after IONIC installation. You shouldn't care about configuration, and it's awesome. Development environment is out of the box. You can easily debug your app in the browser before building it. On mobile platforms, you can easily debug them in emulators, and you can easily debug them on real devices connected to your computer. So everything works fine, and everything works the same as the development of real native apps. You can build the application from the IONIC CLI for platform and obtain executable file which you need to design and upload to a market without any problems. You can generate code, which is important. It works almost the same as for Angular. You can generate components, services, pipes, other stuff, because in IONIC they introduced separation between components and pages, which are actually the same. And also you can use IONIC Pro services. They provide cloud for building mobile applications, but I haven't found any reason to pay for it, and I used alternatives. So, literally looks like a command where you can type project name, it will create a folder, create all structure, and it's already ready to build. So, that's what I actually explained, and also installs some default Cordova plugins you need. So, you can run your code in browser with one command, and it will generate like imitation of mobile device in browser. You can actually just web server for your Angular app, so nothing special. You can use Cordova commands. IONIC has its own wrapper for Cordova functions to simplify build. And you can add platforms. That's the only thing you need to do after the installation, just add platforms you want to build for. So, code generation. I mentioned code for component services, etc., but you can also generate unit tests. And it generates dependencies. For example, you created a component, it injects it into the model. You shouldn't care about dependency injection, it does it. So, pretty the same as Angular CLI does. And I wanted to ask you, if you have a chance, please use CLIs to generate code, because it's your time, it's time of people who work after you, and some predictable structure. It's very important and helpful. The question about building as not mobile developer, I made a situation that I should have environment for building mobile application. Hopefully already had Xcode because some software asked me to do so years ago, but also I had to automate the system. So I investigated and found many useful clouds which can help me to build the application for very low prices remotely. And also I made a situation when I wanted to use continuous integration. It's pretty similar to any mobile continuous delivery services. So I had to handle Git flow. I wanted to build two versions of my application. First one for development, the second one for master branch. Also, I wanted to deploy it. We had our own repository. Wasn't deployed to our markets. And also, yes, I mentioned it. So I found that Jenkins helps me as usually. It can be easily used for my reasons. I just set it up on Mac Mini because I had to build for iOS also. I installed Jenkins on it and made a build server out of it. It works perfectly without any issues. So everything can be configured in very small time. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, you can reach me or ask now. And thanks.